So I view every negative moment in life as a blessing because it's one of the most amazing ways that you can actually learn, and it shapes you to who you are. A really favorite quote that I have is that your greatest superpower actually lies right next to your deepest wound. And actually diving in and learning from those things that are maybe your deepest wounds, your worst mistakes, can be the catalyst that will really push you forward in life. In this video, I want to get a little vulnerable and expose the top mistakes that I've made growing 2 8-figure companies and the lessons that I've learned from them. Let's dive in. So the first one dates back to the inception of Albeware. Just started the company. My co-founder and I were looking at how do we set up the legal entity structure and so on and so forth. And we just went to an online start your business kind of thing and opened it up for like $400 there. We didn't know anything about that. We just made something simple. And then we were in conversations about a year later with certain venture capitalists, and we realized that we had to completely change the legal structure that we had. And we had the option to go with a Bay Area expert law firm that handles only startups in the tech world, or we found through my network this other option for a more cost-effective Chicagoland firm that didn't do a whole ton of startup specialty work, but they were a pretty good business legal entity. We went with them. Now, it turns out they completely screwed up all the legal paperwork, and my co-founder and I lost something that's called QSBS. And basically, it's where you wouldn't pay capital gains tax, which is very expensive within the United States, on any sort of proceeds from the company. It's like this founder tax break that founders get. Because of the choice to go with a law firm that was $10,000 less expensive, we ended up losing multi-million dollars. Like currently it keeps going up, but currently like the tax exposure is somewhere around $10 million that my co-founder and I lost because we decided to cheap out on the legal fees. A company, for example, can become very valuable in the future, and you can lose out a lot in the future if you don't do it properly. So the second mistake actually dates back to early days within Rumextera when we sold our first large fire job. And at the time, the company was relatively new, and in the restoration space, you do the work first and then you get paid afterwards. And prior to us signing this fire, we were very cash tight. Like we're talking about like maybe a week of payroll or something along those lines. And we had signed this fire, we had negotiated with the insurance company, and we had gotten this larger check up front. It was like a $300,000 check. Everything moves on. Fast forward 3 months later, the client from the fire decides to cancel because we kind of screwed up during the demolition process and so on and so forth. We had only done about $80,000 worth of work at the time. So we had to basically cut the check to the client back for about $250,000. Now, we went to look at the bank account, and there was less than $250,000 in the bank account because of our poor cash management at the time. So it was a very horrifying moment. And eventually we talked to the client, full transparency, and eventually we were able to give that money back and such. But we realized that we weren't ever accounting for this quote unquote unearned income. So what we did moving forward is we always tracked deposits that we took in that we hadn't earned money on, and made sure that those were always like in a separate account and accounted for. And we always treated every customer very fragile, like they can cancel on us anytime and we'd have to give them their money back. So the third lesson I learned is actually a personal one. And you're actually gonna laugh because I'm a contractor by trade, so I shouldn't have had this happen to me. So we contracted to do this basement remodel for like $120,000. He was going to do the basement and deck and such. He showed up. He was very punctual at the beginning, demoed everything, and then stopped showing up. The caveat is the contract that I signed with him, part of it was cash and part of it was financed, but he got all the money up front. And when he walked away, I got screwed over by about $80,000. And turns out he actually made the news. He was like a con artist within the Chicagoland area and so on and so forth. And yeah, still paying off that $80,000, and my basement is still completely in shambles. So I think the number one thing you need to learn is never pay up front for something that you don't get back, because then you completely lose all leverage, especially in home improvement projects. And the last lesson I learned is actually a very, very, very personal. Earlier on, prior to meeting my wonderful wife, I had an ex-girlfriend. And that ex-girlfriend wasn't the most loyal ex-girlfriend in the world to me, myself, and I. You know, we had a tough breakup, stuff like that. Everything ended, and I went back into the dating world and ended up meeting my now wife. And I remember like the first year and a half of the relationship, I was very insecure about the disloyalty from the previous person, and almost like assuming that my current wife would do the things that the ex would do. But what I learned is just because you get screwed over once, or you have a situation where trust doesn't go into your favor, doesn't mean you should stop trusting. Because there are so many beautiful things that are built upon trust. If you really think about it, a relationship and a marriage is built upon trust. If you really think about it, a business is built upon trust. Everything in the world that functions super well is built on a foundation of trust. And if you're going to go out in the world and use an incident where trust worked against you and project that and basically fear trust, you're not going to be able to reap the benefits, and you're going to hold yourself back from the beautiful things that happen when trust goes very well. So in conclusion, out of the mistakes that I outlined in this video, I have learned a lot, and it's shaped me for who I am. But the number one thing that I think was amazing about all these experiences is it never changed who I am at the core. And I think a lot of us, we tend to go through failures. We tend to go through these learning lessons. Some of them may be more severe than others. And we change who we are at a core, or we start questioning who we are at core because of those lessons. And I think it's very important to remain you for who you are and not really stop doing certain things completely just because a mistake happened. Instead, try to learn from them and try to iterate upon them. And I think that's where the magic happens. If you like this content, want to hear more, please subscribe to my channel, as every single week I pour into the world via this channel. You can also find me on socials, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on and so forth. I'll see you next week.